a lot of times in all of these advice podcasts, what they're doing is they're trying to give you advice on how to maneuver a toxic relationship, which is dating. Dating is toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Dating is toxic.
If I was your best friend, I'd want you around me all the time. Can I be your best friend if you promise that you'll be mine?
Today's question. We do have a question today. I am not a hater. I'm a lover.
Both. A loving hater. Those are real loving haters.
All right. Today's question, y'all. So the question reads, if we were to take a how-to class together, cooking, wine tasting, dancing, art, knitting, learning magic tricks, absolutely not, that's witchcraft, financial planning, or podcasting, what class would you want us to take and to what end?
Dancing to no end.
I'm here for financial planning.
Oh, we already got that though.
Yeah, we do. Shout out to the Floyds, but
Yes, and y'all will be hearing from the Floyds, okay? We're going to put y'all in contact with all of our mentors, by the way.
If we were to take a how-to class together, so we kind of actually already are, shout out to them, the Floyds. We're going to put y'all on game later, right?
Kind of.
Sort of, kind of,
No,
yeah.
we did. What do you mean?
Yeah, but like when we interview them, we're going to put them on game on who they are.
Oh, yeah, but you said we kind of already took a class.
We on game. Like, but y'all, we got to put y'all on game.
For sure.
Yeah, so shout out to the Floyds.
Mm-hmm.
So because I guess we've done that, and we're doing that, that's life. That's like to no end until death. Maybe I'm here for dancing classes, so we were just talking about that in our last episode, so we can bachata the night away. Yeah, and salsa and merengue and arriba. Okay, all right, y'all. So last episode we talked about your navigating your single season part 1.
Right.
And we talked about community, we talked about trauma triggers, we talked about hobbies, and a bucket list.
Yes. There's a few of you that got to already watch part 1, and they were telling me that someone actually told me that it was their favorite episode.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I think it's because of the single steps, like giving the insight.
Steps.
The insight of what that looks like to do.
It might be, but also I know I received a lot of feedback just from the community piece. Not necessarily from those who are single, but just, piggybacking off the importance of community and how they were challenged and how they were stretched in ways that they probably wouldn't have been had they been in a season of isolation or, just did not make themselves available to community. So shout out to Nadia. Super proud of you. You know why. But yeah, it's really good.
Nadia, with your bad self, girl. Go ahead. Leave them boys alone, girl. Leave them boys alone. Brittany, I heard you say you ain't want that smoke. I'm kidding. Listen, y'all, you should let them know. I'm coming to the Pink Garden, okay? So Jazz, if y'all already don't know, Jazz has a book club, the Pink Garden. I want those girls to know I'm coming.
They know. I told them last Monday.
Okay, what they said?
They said, all right.
Okay, I'm coming.
They know.
All right.
All right, y'all. So the next thing we want to talk about is therapy.
Yes, therapy. A lot of people don't take therapy like super serious, and a lot of people downplay the power of it. But therapy doesn't take away the trauma. Therapy helps relieve and help you navigate that trauma.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of trauma that we have that we need navigation through. And one thing that I always say is a lot of times we want people to change, not acknowledging the fact that trauma rewires the brain.
It does. Yeah, that's so good.
And therapy helps untangle
a lot of those things. And sometimes contingent upon the depths of your therapy, you might need therapy and some medicine, an actual doctor.
Oh, Lord.
Oh,
my
like
God.
an actual doctor. I'm just saying, because sometimes you do need you might have a dual diagnosis. I'm just saying, like, because some people have really incurred so much trauma that they are incapacitated. They do not have the capacity to work things out on their own.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because we don't want to minimize. There's some people that experience some real stuff, and I'm Lord, I say all the time, like, thank you for your favor, because even though I still have to work out my process, just some of the people within my own family, some of the things that they experienced would have took me right on out. Like, Lord, you already know. I already know. Like,
but you know, I don't want to only just go lean straight towards the medicine thing, because I feel like that is the most common thing that happens.
For sure.
You know, and a lot of times what I find is having the right person to talk to, not just friends,
right,
but having the right person to talk to.
Right counsel.
Right. That right there gives you room to iron out and to think through things.
For sure. Because there are two kinds of, I mean, there are two kinds of therapists, if you will. You have those who are actually in it for your betterment, like they want to see you individually better, and then you have those who just want the financial compensation behind the actual career, you know, itself.
For sure. And we want to try to deal with some kind of therapist that
you want faith-based therapy.
Yeah, definitely faith-based therapy, but that aren't described. I mean, that can't prescribe you medicine. Like they're
those are psychiatrists,
right?
So we're talking about your licensed mental health counselors. We're talking about your licensed professional counselors, like specifically therapists who practice the art of counseling, not those, you know, who practice the art of medication. And even in that, so I know in the last episode, you guys, you know, heard me say that my mom, you know, is undergoing therapy. Shout out to her. And I actually had to look for a therapist for her, right? And I, without getting into too much, but you know, God has really been revealing to me the level of spiritual warfare and what that really means. Well, I don't even say warfare, but you know how the Bible says that this, what we fight against is not of flesh and blood.
Yeah.
You know, and so like spiritually, I'm like seeing things like, wow, like there really is another element that we really don't know how real it actually it is. It's said that is more real than we are, right? And so as I was looking to find a therapist for my mom, just pay attention to who you're going to. Look at what their beliefs are, look at what their practices are, because just because they are a therapist does not automatically mean that they're a believer. And even if they are a believer, you know, one thing that I said to you was, for some reason it seems like when we say the word God, it automatically invokes trust, but we never ask, what God are you referring to, you know?
What do you believe?
Yeah, what God specifically do you believe in? Because I'm talking about God, you know, the Father of Jesus Christ. So, but that's not everybody's belief system. So I would encourage you to.
I always think it's weird when people be like what, like phrase it how you phrased it, like what God. Like, there's only one God, so it's really more so what do you believe in? Because,
well, but people will refer to as a deity or an idol as a God. Like Buddha is my God, Allah is my God. Okay, that's your God, but that's not my God.
And Scripture also reverts to there will be no other God. So I guess any idol that you put can be your God.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you this: why do you think that therapy is so important during your single season?
Therapy is important during your single season because, one, if you don't focus on you, you will get distracted by everything and everybody else. And so you will, who was I talking to? I can't remember who I was talking to, but they realized that they had a really huge problem with people pleasing. And so I think there are certain things that your counselor will be able to expose to you. Like if people are too close to you, such as your close friends or even your family members, and if they might try to encourage you to like, hey, like, you know, these are some behaviors that I'm noticing that might not be the best practices to adopt early on because of the ramifications of them later on in your adulthood. A counselor is just a unbiased, neutral third party who has your best interest. Like they don't get anything out of it other than to see you do better.
For sure.
That's it, you know. And so you can be as candid, you can be as honest as possible because like their opinion essentially doesn't matter, and most of them don't even have an opinion, you know, because don't get it wrong, the counselor needs counseling too, you know, they got their own stuff, they have their own problems. And so I just think that being able to go to somebody who's trained to listen, right? Because not everybody, just because you're talking to them doesn't mean that they're listening to you.
Yeah.
So one, you're communicating with somebody who's trained to listen. And they're listening for certain things. They're listening for certain similarities. They're listening for certain parallels, and they're able to help you paint a picture of your cognitive processing. Like, okay, like why do you think this way? Why do you process this way? Why do you trigger this way?
Yeah.
You know, whereas just a regular conversation, like I said, with a friend or a family member, we're trauma bonding, or, you know, we're just exchanging hurt, and I'm feeling like, oh, well, you understand me. No, y'all just playing pickleball with the same, you know, disappointment, shame, guilt, hurt, whatever.
What do you think is the difference between the person that goes to therapy prior to getting married or engaged and the person that doesn't, or let's say the same person, but the version of them that goes and the version of them that doesn't.
It's how prepared you are, one, for life, but how prepared you are for you. Because I feel like we're so quick to learn everything else about life, and we essentially put ourselves last. Like we are the last thing that we learn about. We learn about how to be a parent. We learn how to be a sibling, a cousin, a friend. We learn how to be a spouse, right? You learn how to be a mom. And then once you've exasperated yourself with wearing all these hats, and you're just like, wow, I have no time for me, it's because you've never learned how to prioritize you. So you don't even know what you need.
You never learned how to be you.
You know what everybody else needs from you, but you don't know how to be you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you don't know what you need from you.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So during my single season, I went to therapy when my cousin Adrian passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I knew the healing that came from therapy after going. To my knowledge, you didn't start therapy or any kind of counseling until we did premarital counseling, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you think that it would have prepared you more because we did premarital counseling when we were engaged, when we were fiance, how do you feel like that you would have been? Do you feel like how therapy would have helped you if you would have done it in your single season?
Had I went to therapy in my single season, I would have been no doubt more self-aware. I already had a very high level of self-awareness, but I did not know certain things that I kind of like blocked out and I suppressed. I would have been forced to deal with those things.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because so in undergrad, I studied psychology. In grad school, I studied counseling. And to the point of where I was in my practicum, I was actually practicing, supervised visits. But never once did I ever envision myself in the seat from which I was helping others in. You know? And it's like, so again, I say for those of you, you guys have all of the resources. You see it. We're talking about it. I was in it, around it, and not one person. I can't even recall a professor. I don't even think they advocated for therapy for us individually. It was always in the best interest of the client. But nobody ever painted a picture of you being a client. It was just, the therapist needs therapy, the counselor needs counseling, and we laugh about it. And often it was put in a way of, because you receive so much, like you have to have somewhere to output. You just can't continually intake people's problems because like you will become the problem. But yeah, so I definitely would have been more self-aware.
Yeah, that's good.
So many of the things that we've had to overcome or the monotonous conversations that we have over and 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 over again. Thank you for your patience. We probably would not have had to have
so many. Yeah.
What about you? So prior to Adrian's transitioning, like you never went to counseling, but had you gone to counseling just individually for you, how do you think that would have prepared you?
I honestly think that I would have been a lot more clear-minded. I would have, because the thing about therapy is you don't know what you don't know. So it's like one of those things where you may think that you're healed, you may think you know what you're doing, but until somebody that's talking to you that can see the areas where you're not healed and actually reveal those to you, you don't even know that they exist.
That's true.
So I think I would have been a lot more clear-minded if I went to therapy. I think that from that clear-mindedness, I would have been able to make better decisions because I would have been making them from a healthier place.
Right.
And mental fog and emotional fog is real.
It is.
And a lot of times we'll bury things because of the lack of knowledge of how to deal with them. So I think I just would have been a lot more clear-minded, a lot more prepared. And I believe that that's the importance of therapies, because I believe that without therapy, right, we didn't know what we didn't know, right? But without therapy and without our intention, we brought things into our marriage that we didn't have to bring.
For sure.
We brought
coping strategies into our marriage just because we weren't aware of the actual problem. we respond to the symptom of things and not to the actual diagnosis of it. It's
the actual cause of it.
Yeah, or the cause rather. The cause or the diagnosis. It's just like, well, what is a symptom?
Yeah. Yeah, so. For sure. And I think more so than anything, without even doing it on purpose, I made you deal with things that some things you had to deal with things that you wouldn't have had to, you wouldn't have had to deal with if I would have went to therapy. Mm-hmm. Certain things I had to deal with, some of the things I wouldn't have had to deal with if you would have went to therapy.
For sure.
So for everyone out there who may be minimizing therapy, who say, that's a good idea, I'm gonna get to that.
Yeah.
We encourage you to make it a priority. We created this list of these specific 9 things, right? And we can go into detail about even more, but just these specific 9 things. We spoke about 4 at the beginning: community, trauma triggers, hobbies, bucket list. And number 5 is therapy, because you don't want to bring something into your marriage toxic wise that doesn't have to be there.
Exactly.
You don't want your spouse to have to help you through a healing that they didn't have to help you through, that you could have got before them. Because
not only do you have to heal from that, but now your spouse has to heal from that as well, contingent upon, how you may have inflicted your pain unknowingly, yes, upon your spouse. And so the beautiful thing about therapy is it will help you, and it's hard, I get it, but it'll help you explore, the onset of those issues, the onset of those emotions, like, okay, like, where do they come from? It helps you investigate, just where your background, it helps you go back there. And then from there, you're able to identify certain things. Yeah. So you're able to differentiate your identity from your trauma, because many of us find our identity in our trauma.
That's good.
The same way many of us identify the same way many of us find our identity in our occupation.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no, that is a part of who you are, but that is not who you are. You're
Yes.
so much more than that. I know you have something to share.
No, that's really good. I was just going to share, let's talk about some certain things that you should look for in a therapist, right? So allow me to go first.
Yeah.
The first thing that I would say is that they're faith-based.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing: if your therapist may be able to help you out psychologically, but they need to also be able to help you out spiritually.
Absolutely.
Because if they only navigate you psychologically, then there's still going to be a need and a lack of navigation spiritually. And if they are someone that is of faith, they can combine both when addressing what you're dealing with, because it's never just one thing, it's always both.
Yeah.
So that's the first and foremost thing, is that it's important to find that faith-based therapist.
Yeah.
What's another thing that you would say?
I would say make sure you find a culturally competent therapist. That doesn't necessarily mean that your therapist has to be of the same ethnic origin as you.
Definitely
right?
Not.
Like, I can have a Caucasian therapist. I can have an Asian therapist.
Definitely.
Right? As long as they are culturally competent, that they've educated themselves, or they've had enough clients to understand, like, okay, what are some important factors that aids in the development of boom, 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 boom. Right?
Whatever the topic is. So it can be about fatherhood, children. It could be not just, when she says culturally competent, it's not just about race. It's actually least about race, actually, truthfully. It's more so about whatever.
Well, it's about both, actually. I don't want to minimize that. It's definitely about both, because some of the things that are practiced in the Asian culture aren't practiced in the African American culture. For example, in the Asian culture, they are very conformative. They are very much, they live in community. However, we are very individualistic.
For sure. However, when you're going to a therapist though, and you are addressing things, a good therapist, right? They're speaking from the facts, and they're helping navigate from their education, so wherever background that you're coming from, because everyone that they see comes from a different background.
For sure.
So their job is to navigate from the education and experience that they have.
For sure.
Not based upon where you come from.
For sure.
So, and that's the beautiful thing about therapy as well, is that if you get someone that's knowledgeable about what they're doing, it doesn't matter who's in their seat. They can help you navigate it, because what they're navigating is not the every detail of your life or every detail of your experience. What they're navigating is your cognitive abilities and your habits and your hurt, you know, and helping you navigate those things.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, definitely. Because I actually had someone that said, hey, I think I want to get a black male therapist. And, you know, the conversation that I had with them was, it's like, well, maybe that's not what you need, you know, because maybe that's too familiar to you.
Right.
And you need somebody to be more objective.
Yeah.
You know, so you definitely want a therapist that can be objective and not just be so close in resemblance to you and so close in relation to you that you're literally having a conversation that you would have with yourself.
Right. And that can also, you know, serve as a trauma trigger to some degree. You know, it's just like, oh, I'm looking at you as a representation of the father that I never had.
Yeah.
Of the uncle that, you know, may have sexually assaulted me, of whatever, you know, so you need to be aware of those things as well when selecting counsel. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, I mean, just try out different people. I'm going to be honest with y'all. Listen, I'm going to always definitely give you whatever our experience was. The best counsel that we've received out of the different counselors that we've had, as far as paid counsel, right? Not our mentors, but paid counsel. It was a Caucasian woman. She was a
phenomenal listener.
Yes. And she was a faith-based woman. And she was able to respond. She was able to affirm. She was able to challenge.
Yeah.
She was able to question. She literally was listening in intrigueness.
Yeah.
Is that a word? Intrigueness?
Well, she was listening for understanding, for sure.
Is intrigueness a word, though?
I don't know. I know intrigued is a word.
Okay. Well, she was looking in that. She was. She used to be sitting there while we was talking.
She was,
what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, yo, baby is driving me crazy. And she was like,
drive me crazy too.
She'd be like,
All right. Anyway,
it was really good though. So definitely. So faith-based, you know, someone that is definitely competent. And here's the thing, you might only know it by trying different ones.
Sometimes you have to.
Because we went through like 5 or 6. Like literally.
And you have to be awareness. There's a terminology called countertransference, which is basically where you are imposing something onto the counselor, and then they're imposing it back to you. Example: I had a counselor. She was African American, right?
Counselor horror story already.
And these were virtual sessions, and my individual session with her was great, right? But then when it came to our session, immediately I can't work with him. And it was because he served as a reminder of her ex-husband, and whatever trauma that she incurred from that past marriage, she was projecting that onto my husband just because of the dynamics of our situation and why we were receiving counsel. And so you have to be aware of a counselor who's projecting maybe their personal experience, and you have the ability to do that too. Don't project your experience onto the counselor.
Yeah, let's break that down, because let me say, this lady, she wasn't projecting it onto me. Okay. She was living in the projection of it itself. She was projecting it onto everyone, because her counselor sessions with y'all two together, no, they were not good. Those were not good counseling sessions. No, they were not. I didn't even have to be a part of them to know how they're not good counselor sessions. Y'all, this is for anybody, the married people, and also the people who are, you know, going to be married in the future. Y'all listen to this. Okay. When your spouse comes back from
go ahead.
Counsel should be done together. First of all, let me say that. You know, if you're married and you're in counseling, you should do that together. All right. Now, if you're single, definitely do it on your own. But if your spouse comes back from counseling and she feels more righteous in her position, there's something wrong with that counselor. Because here's the thing. Every time she came back from talking to this lady, she seemed more confident about some things that she shouldn't ever been confident about than when she went to the counselor. So I'm like, this lady ain't helping you figure out nothing. This lady's helping you double down. She wasn't helping her navigate anything. She was reaffirming her emotions. And here's one thing that I will say is that there are a lot of therapists out there that will just reaffirm your emotions.
That's
okay.
True too, yeah.
So you don't want anybody to reaffirm you.
Yeah.
You want someone to help untangle you and navigate you.
Yeah.
You know, you want someone to help you progress. You don't need nobody to tell you, yeah, you should feel. Yeah, you should. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I understand. I mean, you got friends for that. You know,
It's the you got friends for that.
you know, really though, you don't need that. But one thing I will say, and I know we're just talking into this therapist thing altogether. So you shouldn't go to therapy on your own when you're married, unless under certain circumstances. One reason is because as a spouse, you want to make sure that you're there for that growth process, right? You want to make sure you're a part of that growth process.
For sure. And accurate recollection. Because for me, you know, contingent upon the reasoning for therapy, right? Like if I'm going to therapy because of an action that hurt me because of you, I'm not going to accurately remember, you know? But if I'm going for me, well, then chances are like I can accurately remember, but if I'm going because of you, the only thing I remember is the feeling. The only thing I remember is the pain. I don't remember the actual action that led to that response. And so when he talks about like both of you being in a session, accurate recollection matters, because I don't always have that.
Yeah.
I didn't always have that.
Yeah. And that goes for both sides. That's really good. But that goes for both sides because there's certain things that I might think about that may exclude her version of it, or a important piece that she may be thinking about. Right. And even if I go to therapy for, let's say, not even marriage, just for myself, if I go to therapy just for myself to deal with certain things,
then it needs to be just for you. Like you can't talk about anything that I did.
Exactly. You can't talk about your spouse if you're just going by yourself.
For yourself. Absolutely.
And here's the truth. If you're just going by yourself, you can't talk about your spouse. But I'm going to be honest as well. If you have the time and have the space, do the individual together as well. Even if y'all are showing up together to therapy, I think that it's still wise to, even if it's like, yo, this session, I know you need to get some things off. I know you need to just talk to her about certain things about your personal life. Then do that, you know, because the challenge, because the sticky situation is when you're already married, is those intimate conversations. Those are things that you have to be able to do within your relationship, within your marriage.
Anyway. Yeah.
So excluding yourself or excluding your spouse from such powerful conversation and learning how to navigate those conversations in real time is actually can many times be counterproductive.
And actually, you know, he brought that to you're the one that presented that point because of maybe one of our last sessions, and I think I went by myself. You know, he's like, well, how did it go? And I can't actually remember, but he was like, no, like we need to be going to these sessions like together, you know, because as he said, like we share a lot, we talk a lot, so it shouldn't be an offense, you know, for your spouse to come and it's just like, listen, this is my session. As a courtesy, I'm letting you sit in so that way you can see my growth and you can actually hear what counsel is being, what feedback I'm receiving, or what actionable steps I'm receiving. And so that way you too can hold me accountable to that, you know? So, but it's like, but you don't get to be offended by what I share in that session because I'm letting you sit in as a courtesy.
For sure. And also as well, if you do get offended, you need to address that to the therapist because the therapist is going to help you navigate through that as well. And that's the beauty about doing it together. Because when she did come home from a session of her own, I remember you couldn't even recall the whole session, you know? And that's the thing is like, well, now neither one of us can talk about what really went on because you done released so much. Y'all done talked about so much. And now you're all empty and refreshed. And I was like, well, I can't even fully tell you everything that we talked about. So, I mean, I get it. What if your spouse is a part of the trauma, part of the triggers and all of that? There's always
part of the healing too, though. And I know
they're a part of the healing too.
I know that sucks, and I know that is a hard truth, and we don't want to accept it because we want to be validated in our feelings, and it's like, no, like you hurt me, I want you to hurt too, but no, unfortunately, like the very thing that hurt you is also going to be the same thing that's going to heal you.
Yeah, yes, and you have to learn how to do it together if you want to last forever.
Yeah.
So for all you married people, go to counseling together. All right. Now, another thing I want to say is a good thing that you can do to search up therapists is one, there's this thing called psychologytoday.com.
There's Open Path.
And you can go on these websites, and specifically with Psychology Today, I don't know about Open Path, you can let me know, but Psychology Today, you can actually literally go through it and say, okay, man, woman,
Same thing.
faith, faith-based, Christian, this, that, whatever, you know? So yes, so go through those and actually click those filters, and you might have to go through a couple therapists to get to the right one. You may have to contact them multiple times.
So that's why I like
the right one.
That's why I like Open Path, because it gives you the state that they're in, it gives you their age range, it gives you their sex, whether they're male or female. It gives you what they practice, like what theories they practice or what style of counseling they practice. And then it gives you the option to set up a consultation with them. It gives you an option to contact them. And so
is this it? Open Path Collective?
Yes. And so that's how I went about finding a therapist for my mom. I just went through, and the photos, y'all. Photos will tell you a lot. Like some of them photos, you look like you need therapy. Like some of them photos look like, how are you gonna help somebody? So some of them photos, like,
oh Lord,
baby.
Okay, sorry.
You know, like
crazy.
I can't. No, but seriously, go on there and you will see what I'm talking about. It's like I don't really know. Like, so I like that aspect too, because no, imaging isn't everything, but for those who know, you know, when something seems off, it's off. You know that it's not for you. So it's like, instead of wasting additional time, instead of wasting additional money, I can just keep going on down the list or to the next page until I find something that is fitting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's another one you guys have, Open Path.
Yeah. And so essentially,
my boy took a picture on a balcony. You see?
I ain't mad at him. Yep, psychotherapist.
That's
like our background. Yeah, I mean, like, we're across from us. But yeah, so the goal is for you to heal, right? And if you can't, the goal is for you to heal. The goal is for you to reconcile those issues, right? And then you want to maintain that. Like, that is, we are in the maintenance phase. Like, you want to maintain whatever was uprooted and try to stay away from triggers that will take you back there. So
yes, for sure. And back to the single people, making time for that is you preparing for marriage. You know, a lot of times people feel like, oh, like I was having this conversation with this guy on live yesterday, and he was like, what did he say? He said, how do you feel about all of these different people who are giving advice about relationships? And the thing that I responded to him was, I said, well, the challenge is that all of these people that are saying what a man or woman should or shouldn't be, they're speaking from a place of being a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You know, and the challenge with that is that a girlfriend's complaints are different than a wife's complaints. A husband's complaints are different than a boyfriend's complaints.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so a lot of times in all of these advice podcasts, what they're doing is they're trying to give you advice on how to maneuver a toxic relationship, which is dating. Dating is toxic. Dating is toxic. Okay. And this one girl actually said, this girl was like, you know what, you need to tell my daughter that, let her come in here and on stream. And then so she brought her daughter in there, and she was like, go ahead and tell her. And I said, dating is toxic. She said, no, it depends on who you're dating. It depends on the people in a relationship. And that's what a lot of people think, but it's not, because if we're talking about from what God says about maintaining that intimacy until marriage, what dating does is put you in a compromising position.
It does all the time.
And it makes you have to work 10 times, 20 times, 100 harder.
Because you're right here. Harder.
Exactly. To maintain that level of discipline, because you're playing house, you're playing husband and wife, you know, and it's like, well, we're practicing, you know, it's not practice, it's playing, because you can't practice being a husband. You can't practice being a wife. The only thing that you can do is practice being healthy.
And prepare.
That
practice by preparing. That's what you do. Because
exactly. Practice by preparation. And
can't play your way into this. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. You can't. And when you get into it, it's a whole different, psychologically, emotionally, physically, it's a different ball game altogether.
Yeah. Because in a relationship, you don't have to compromise. It's whatever you want. It's whatever you want, because there's no real commitment.
Yeah, and you can play, you know what I mean? You could play the whole little cute thing, the little attitude back and forth, the little, oh, she's just getting on my nerves, or oh, he's blah, blah, blah. You can do that little cute thing. But in marriage, it ain't cute no more. You know what I'm saying? Because you with that person every single day. You know,
Yeah,
you
ain't
wake
no
up.
going. I'm going back to my apartment, or I'm going back to my
Ain't
house.
ain't no separate space. Y'all are literally building
Better go on the couch.
life
next
together.
room. Yeah.
You know, and so it's not this kinky, cute little thing that being a boyfriend and girlfriend is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so definitely get your therapy on, fam. Bam, get your therapy on.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
next, my favorite. Oh my God, y'all, like,
I love traveling.
it's my love language.
Travel peeps.
It's my love language. Like, if
Number
I
6
told
is
y'all I was a
travel.
flight attendant, like, but it's really is my love language. One, because I'm just wowed by God's creation. And I tell you that
Wowed.
I am wowed. Every time we travel, I'm just like, this is so amazing. You are so amazing. Like, this is so cool. So for those, I don't understand the people that don't like to travel. I don't understand, y'all. I don't, for the life of me, because it's just, I come to life when I see God's creation.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
I really, really do. And I love exploring. I love learning. And it just grows a greater appreciation for what I have or what I don't have.
Yeah.
You know, like, I've never been to a third world country, and that's not on my bucket list. But I can only imagine how humble I would be if I went and experienced some of those things that they experience.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, so
For sure.
travel, like, go out and see the world.
Yes, and that doesn't mean travel. That means travel as an individual with a friend group. That doesn't mean with a boo thing.
Right.
Because again, connected to that difference between boyfriend and girlfriend and husband and wife is, you know, there is a such thing as blessed sex. There's a such thing as blessed sex. You know what blessed sex is? Sex within the covenant of your marriage that was ordained by God. Right? Sex within a healthy marriage is blessed sex.
Relationships that's burdened.
It is. That's burden sex, you know, and it's a place from out of sin, you know, and sin meaning lust, right? And the thing is that lust, like, you think you're making love when you're boyfriend and girlfriend, but what you're really doing is just expressing lust for each other,
Right.
you know. And a lot of times it might not even be lust for the individual. It just might be lust for your fantasies or your ideas, and you're just projecting it onto the individual.
Or it might be a coping mechanism, you know, like for a lot of people.
Heavy on a coping mechanism.
Yeah, how we, even just in our segment grief sex, like a lot of people want sex just for comfort, or for I'm feeling anxious, I'm stressed, I'm depressed, like anything to help rid me of this feeling.
Yeah.
Right. So for some that's alcohol, for some that's weed, for some that's sex, for some that's shopping.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever it is, but we're talking about specifically in this realm. Are they all sins? Absolutely. Right. But in this one, I think the ramifications are so much greater than that of any of the others, just because of how it affects your temple, like this living, breathing, living, breathing thing. You know what I'm saying? That is a reflection of God's image.
Yeah.
So, you know, when I go and buy a bag, that's not a reflection of God's image.
Yeah.
You know, you smoking a blunt, that's not a reflection of God's image, or picking up a bottle.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, that's so true. That's so true. That's so true. So please don't conflate what we're saying as far as with the travel thing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, I need to travel with my boo things, blah, blah. I got to be able to see there's certain, so there's actually this lady that actually checked out some of our content and she reposted it. And she said, I don't think that I would be able to go from friend to fiance. And we had a short conversation and I said, well, you know, the only major difference, the most significant difference is the intimacy part between a relationship and a friendship. And she was like, well, I would disagree. There's real life situations and scenarios that you get to see how somebody will respond to and act on.
But that's still imaginative.
Yeah.
Because that's how they're responding right now.
Exactly.
That's how they're responding right now. Like when you take those vows for richer or for poor, right now everything good. Like we both got checks flowing in. We both got our full health. You know, like we both have open availability, right? For in sickness or for health, right? For richer or for poor, or what is it? For better or for worse. Like that in between is where y'all living in. You're not living in the better. You're not, first there's no covenant, but you're not living in the for better. You're not living in the for worse. You are living in your imagination.
Yeah. And that's good, because me showing up for you at the hospital as your boyfriend is different than me being there as your husband.
Yeah.
It's just different. It's just,
now you have to choose, like, do I go and I serve as a source to myself, right? Like as a resource to myself, knowing that God is the source. But do I go and fulfill my financial obligation, or do I actually sit here and I incur the ramifications of that, but I'm here with my wife?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. No,
those are real. I don't have no vacation time, right? Or I'm on an hourly wage. I'm on hourly wages. You know, like those are real things that you have to consider. So now you're dealing with the emotional ramifications of your wife or your husband feeling like you left me in the hospital all alone, but I still got to take care of you even in your sickness.
Yes, and also as well, feeling like you're secure because somebody is kind to you during a dating phase. There's plenty of people who got married and then everything changed, whether on the male side, the woman's side, or both.
Yeah.
Right. So this idea that I can tell you what you can see is the bare minimum. You can see the bare minimum in a relationship. Like, oh, this person's trash, so maybe I don't want to continue with this person because they're trash. But the truth is, even when a person shows trash tendencies, if you're romantically involved with them,
it's not going to matter.
Exactly. You're going to give them passes.
I was talking to, Scrub, I don't want to use his real name, the one I told you about. And shout out Scrub, I'm so proud of you, but he was celibate for quite a while, got into a relationship. And he said, like, as soon as I got into that relationship, I noticed, started having sex and all these different things, moved the girl in. He said, it took away my focus off of God. He was like, it took my focus off of God. And I started making excuses, and I started making justifications for behavior that I know that I'm better than.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, and so he cut it off, and he was just like, I moved out and now I'm back to focusing on God and myself. But it's all because of what I wanted.
Yeah.
And he rationalized it in that, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. He rationalized it. And I remember early on, he was, sharing some things, and I was just like, well, if I said, I can give the girl some grace. I said, if that is your person, and he was just like, well, thank you for even just saying that even though I knew it wasn't.
Yeah.
Even though I knew it wasn't, I knew that you were shopping on the clearance rack.
Yeah, but
because of what you wanted.
But you know what though? Being boyfriend and girlfriend or dating or talking or all of that is us taking our destiny into our own hands.
Yeah.
And
it's a counterfeit. We are actually giving ourselves counterfeit experiences. We're giving ourselves counterfeit relationships,
fake love.
We're giving ourselves counterfeit destinies because we can control it.
Drake. No, no, for real. That's fake love.
If you can control it, then chances are it didn't come from God.
Yes.
Not saying that he can't use it, but it didn't come from him.
And it's manipulation, because I'm going to try to be the best version of me for you, and you're going to try to be the best version of you for me, but I'm not really this healed as I'm acting, and you're not really that mature as you're acting. Me. And we're both being the better versions for each other, but we're not really those versions ourselves as individuals.
I'm not that. How can I be that for you and I'm not that for me?
Pretending. I got people showing
all right,
love
anyway,
to me.
So the next thing that you want to do, travel, right? But then you want to educate yourself.
Yeah, and you don't got to go all the way to freaking China or nothing like that. Like, just traveling, meaning that just opening up just broadening your understanding of different areas in the world or in the U.S.
What is it? I think I saw one of the fathers that was like, I'm taking my daughter around the world so that way she won't be impressed by, these trips that you little boys try to give to her. So like, don't be impressed by somebody else's experiences. Don't be impressed by somebody else providing you an experience that you didn't provide for yourself, period. So that's why you need to get out there and travel. Like, do it for yourself first.
Well, not somebody else, because we're sharing this with you from the place of the friend of fiance route. So there wouldn't be a counterpart, a romantic counterpart that would be taking you on these trips anyway.
I mean, that's why I'm saying do it for yourself, not with the intent of somebody else doing that, or even just the thought process of somebody else doing it for you. Okay. But yeah. So next will be educate yourself, right? And I say that like if you aren't learning, you're just stagnant, you're stale. Yeah. So you need to learn how to budget your finances individually before you get with somebody.
Dave Ramsey, it'll get you right. The 10 steps, okay? It's going to get you right. All right. It's hard to do, but it's harder to do even when you have married, a spouse.
For sure. Because
harder to do.
You have two different ways of looking at money, So when we went through our premarital counseling, everything, it was just like, and
everything lined up except for finances. Every single category when we did our premarital counseling, every category lined up except for finances.
Until this day, what's the biggest
finances?
Discourse?
We literally just it's honestly, it's really not even that we view it differently. We just respond to it differently in different scenarios and situations. You know, it's not even, we don't really necessarily have different views per se. We just really have different responses to financial situations.
Which is still a different view at some points. To some point. To some point.
Nah, it's more like emotional reactions to things. Because we're
it's
not
not
really
even emotional reactions, it's preference. For sure.
I don't even think it's preference, honestly. I can't think of something that we view it differently, like, no, we should do it this way, no, we should do it that way. Because when we talk about our budget, it's not like we disagree. It's not like we have a hard time.
But it's everything. It's so, and this is prior to us getting to a budget. Because before, this is prior to. We were very much just
winging it.
Yeah, like we had joint accounts, but there was very minimum communication when it came to finances, and then there would be discourse, and it's just like, well, I did this and I did that, and it's just like, well, if you don't make a plan, if you fail to plan, then you prepare to fail.
Yeah.
So shout out again to our financial advisor, y'all. Get you a third party the same way how you want to get a counselor for your emotional trauma. Get you a counselor for your financial trauma. And it's even better because finances, that is like the number one cause of divorce is finances. So like if you can get somebody that can oversee your finances and like can exclude you from each other, from discourse, and say like, listen, like come to me. Like, I'm going to tell you what to do with your money. If he got an issue with it, she got an issue with it, tell him come to me.
For sure, because the biggest thing is that we're all emotionally responding to our money. And that's why scripture says where your treasure is where your heart is.
Yeah.
You know, so when people be like, no, I don't need to tithe, or people downplay tithing, giving 10% of your income, you know, God says you can keep 90, just give 10% back. I give you the whole 100, but just give 10% to further my kingdom and to bless other people, you know, by way of whatever local church you go to. A lot of people downplay that, you know, and a lot of people, you know, overlook that. But what we don't realize is it's a reflection of your heart.
It is. And I used to be that person. Right. But it was a response to like my trauma. It was a response to feeling like a lack of provision. And so once I realized that, like, oh wow, like, and he didn't budge on that. That was like absolutely a non-negotiable. And when I would see some of the numbers go out the door, I'd be like, Jesus, like, do you like seriously? I would be like, Father, like, Jesus, like what? But
all this money we giving,
you know. But my prayer then became, so well, okay, Lord, like increase the tithe. Increase the tithe.
Because here's the thing, for the 10% to increase that you're giving, that means that he's increased 100%. And if he increased 100%, then that means that he's the 90% has increased. The 90% that you get to keep has increased.
For sure. So get a budget, and then I would encourage you, learn how to cook. You know, like for those men that don't know how to cook, for those women that don't know how to cook, learn how to cook, because this also ties into finances. Like if you don't know how to cook, you are going to spend a astronomical amount of money on eating out, and it's going to be unhealthy.
And you're going to be leaking. You're leaking. And all, you know what we're leaking from? Just pleasures, pleasures, relationship. My finances. I don't have a plan for that. I don't have a direction for that. God, I want you to give me purpose where I haven't created a plan. God, I want you to make me prosperous where I haven't created a plan. And we've all been there, and that's why we're sitting here to be able to talk to you about it now. It's because if you don't do the things that we're sharing, you're going to end up leaking and eventually having to do them or suffering from not having those things in place anyway.
Yeah, literally. And then lastly, I would say like study something. I don't care what it is, like learn something new. Like do not get stale, do not get complacent. For me, I love reading. So I mean, my goal is when we have our forever home is I want a library. Like
and we've already started one. And let me just say, like, this woman, you're so amazing. Right. You know, just how she's been growing spiritually has been such an honor. Like, I'm just even talking about even within the last 60 days, it's just been such an honor to watch. Like, it's been so cool to literally just see you just go after spiritual wisdom, and then you come back and telling me the different things that God spoke to you about when listening to this or when reading this, and you just been so filled. And literally every single time I could step out the house and come back in and you got something to tell me, you know, middle of the night, you know, we didn't get to watch whatever you wanted to show us last night, but it's 12:30, we about to be in bed. Baby got the YouTube paused at a certain spot, like, yo, I want you to listen to this testimony real quick. You know, whatever I'm gonna say to you today.
Yeah, but because literally, and thank you for that, my honey. But what was shared was, you know, it was a Ugandan pastor, and he was talking about how he had an encounter with Jesus, basically, and how, you know, by man, he was like, a lot of you are doing works for men. Like, even when we think about dating, like, that is not for God. That is for you.
It has nothing to do with God.
It has nothing to do with God. He was like, a lot of y'all are putting yourselves on Front Street to please. I can hear it. Oh, to please yourself. To please yourself, and it has nothing to do with God. And he said, you know, in his encounter with Jesus, Jesus said, if I was to take my people today, you would not be in the number. He said, of course, you've cast demons out in my name, you've saved people in my name. He said, but your heart is lustful, your heart is deceitful. He said, do you remember when you were in that cabin, the way you were looking at that lady, when you were here on this altar, and the way you were looking at that lady? He said you don't just sin. He said you don't just sin in a day. He said you live by sin. Like, this is always in your heart. And I was just like arrested, because I'm like, God, like, expose me. Where in my heart am I coveting? Where in my heart am I deceitful? Where in my heart am I lustful? Like, where in my heart am I prideful?
Father, take the big booty holes out the mind. And sorry, I mean, that's real. A lot of people, you know what I'm saying?
You got big booty holes in
your
mind?
No, but I used to.
For me, it was always money. Like, Lord, like, I just want to show me the money. Where is the money? How do I get the money? You know, and I can see somebody and I'm like, oh, that looks nice, but I need money to get it. I need more money to get it. How do I get it? You know, and it's just like, it's not for God. I'm looking at these things because it's for me.
Yes.
Ain't got nothing to do with God.
Yeah.
But everything to do with me.
Yeah.
And so continue to like educate yourself. And I'll just share this last thing as we were talking about that. So I've been in the book of Job lately, just finished it, right? And so what was crazy was just the theme of what I just shared, you know, your heart. When you look at Job's heart and the response of all the people that he was in conversation with, at the end of it, God was like, well, Job, you know, your heart never turned from me. However, those you were in conversation with, they spoke of me wrong. And I'm like, God, like, who am I having conversation with that I think knows you, but where we're exchanging the wrong conversation, and how are they turning my heart?
Oh, so good.
How? So like I'm going to go back and I'm going to study the book of Job, but I need to identify what was their response and why was it wrong?
Yeah, that's so good.
And then what was Job's response and why was it right?
That's so good. That's so good.
Because we live our life like for pleasure in this realm. It ain't got nothing to do with God.
Yeah.
It's just like, what do I get out of it? No, start asking yourself, what does he get out of it? Even in this podcasting space, you know, like when we first started, it didn't seem like there was a whole lot. And now it's like, we feel like everybody and their mama got a podcast. And for me, I started getting discouraged. And I'm like, okay, but this is not for you.
Yeah, this is so good.
This is not for you.
It's so good. It's so good.
This is for God, you know?
Yes. And it's like, what does it mean that it's for God? God is love, right? And there's no sacrifice. There's no love without sacrifice. Love and sacrifice go hand in hand. So when we talk about the importance of Jesus, it's because God gave a sacrifice to express how much he loves us, right? Yeah. So in anything, whether it's your parents, whether it's your spouse, if they don't sacrifice something, give something of theirs, right? Time, energy, money, affection, whatever, you don't feel loved. But what somebody sacrificed for you, you feel a sense of love from, right? And what it is to do it for God or do something because of God, it means for his love to be expanded. Yeah. For his love to be expanded in the earth. This is for God, meaning that this is for his love to be expanded in the earth. Yeah. Meaning that, okay, if I do this, this will allow people more opportunity to come to God, to get to know God more, to receive his love more, not in a religious sense or this or that, but to receive his love and his healing and his guidance and his peace more.
And it's really not even to get something from him, but to get something to him. Like, and essentially that is us giving ourselves, like giving our faith, giving our trust.
Yeah. Now, it is to give, like when we're talking about doing something for God. But remember, like, the reason why God is God and he deserves to be praised and followed and is because of what he gives, because of who he is.
Because of who he is.
Because of who he is. So he is peace. He is love. He is these things. Yeah. And so these things only come attached to him. Yeah. So a lot of times there's this actually note that I've just wrote down yesterday. And it says, without God, life's problems have no lasting solutions.
Without, oh yeah, that's ugly.
Without God, life's problems have no lasting solutions.
There is no solution. Also, I can't remember. I think it was in the book of Job where I read, and it was when God was going back and God gave Job the smoke when he was like, "Can you do this? Can you do that?"
That smoke.
And I don't. And I actually, it was one part of it that
I definitely
that
don't
I
want that smoke,
screenshotted.
For
Let me
real.
see if I can find it really quickly. And
I don't want that smoke, y'all.
and I don't.
Cause y'all on Job, with Job, if y'all don't know the story about Job, God, it was like the Lord spoke about Job and how great he was and how he honored God. And what the devil said was, well, Job only honors you because he's so blessed. But if I take everything away from him, will he still praise you? And then so what the devil said was, what God said was, you're allowed to do everything to him, but kill him. Right. So Job got everything, his family, his business, his life, his health. He got everything stripped from him just to test to see if he was going to really trust God or not. And then God ended up giving it back tenfold.
Yeah. And so this is Job 38, chapter 38, verse 28. And this is for all of my universe believers. Right. So when I read this, I was just like, Lord, like, we're silly. Right? That's all I'm
We
saying.
are.
We are silly.
We are.
He says, does the rain have a father who gives birth to the dew?
Ooh.
Who is the mother of the ice?
Ooh.
Who gives birth to the frost from the heavens? I said, So let that sizzle in your spirit for my universe folks. But anyway, so then Job 38, chapter 38, verse 33 says, do you know the laws of the universe? Can you use them to regulate the earth? In that moment, I thought like, and I don't want to be like super superficial or like, scientific, but like when people think that, like, there are other beings here on earth, I believe there are. This says this right here. Do you know the laws of the universe? How silly how silly of us would it to be to think that God did not create anything else, but what he did create was laws of the universe that he uses to regulate the earth.
Okay.
So
the thing that you wanted to point out though about Job that you went looking for is what?
I think I lost it.
Well, we were talking about God and just actually process that and think about that more. But I actually was reading this and you didn't finish the whole thing, but it says, do you know the laws of the universe? Can you use them to regulate the earth? Can you shout to the clouds and make it rain? Can you make lightning appear and cause it to strike as you direct? Who gives intuition to the heart and instinct to the mind? Who is wise enough to count all the clouds? Who can tilt the water jars of heaven? No one but God.
Nobody but God.
No one but God.
Nobody but God. Nobody but God. And I actually don't remember my point. I'm sorry, guys. But one last thing that I did want to share was,
okay. You got a lot to share.
I do have a lot to share. And this is for women in particular. This is Job 39, chapter 39, verse 14, and he's talking about an ostrich, however you say it. Ostrich, yeah. So he says, she lays her eggs on top of the earth, letting them be warmed in the dust. She doesn't worry that a foot might crush them or a wild animal might destroy them. She is harsh toward her young as if they were not her own. She doesn't care if they die, for God has deprived her of wisdom.
You're saying it to say
God gave us wisdom.
Yeah.
God gave us wisdom. And how naive of us and gullible of us to think that like we will not undergo attack from the enemy, because one, we were made in God's image, we were made in the likeness of him.
Yeah.
But then when we think about our thought processes, if we seek out his wisdom, that is the one thing that Satan wants, is to think like God. Granted, his ways are above our ways, his thoughts are higher than our thoughts, but if we seek him out, he will let us experience some of those things.
Yeah. And this goes into the education part of like educating yourself. And I got this Bible that is a study Bible. So it's not just a Bible where it's like, you guys might have just regular Bibles. We got plenty of regular Bibles, but we also purchase study Bibles to where we can actually, when reading through, they have these other sub areas where it actually goes into depth about the meanings or certain things. And it'll like have questions in there that you can answer, and just thought-provoking statements.
Yeah.
So to teach you a little bit further. Now, we did educate. We said number 7 was educate, but number 8 is fall in love with God.
Yeah.
And it's already what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It's falling in love with God. And I want to share some notes that I've been writing down from my studies. Is we must look beyond our activities to the reasons we do them and the purpose they fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
We must look beyond our activities to the reasons we do them and the purposes they fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
Baby, it's tough. Because I'm a searcher. I'm a seeker. You know how seeking you shall find? I will seek an answer. You know, I'll ask a million questions.
Mm-hmm.
But this thing says, is your goal in life to search for meaning or to search for God, who is the giver of all meaning?
Mm.
Is your goal in life to search for meaning, and that can be of a death, of a situation, of whatever, or to search for God, who is the giver of all meaning?
And I told you God convicted me of that earlier. Specifically, and I know y'all are familiar with Jackie Hill Perry, right? And she posted something about the Enneagram, and in the clip it basically talked about whoever the team was, or one of the men that helped create it. He said, you know, they were like, well, where did you get this information from? He said, an automatic writer. An automatic writer, y'all, is for those who tap into mediums, i.e. witchcraft, right? And they're talking to certain spirits, and those spirits are downloading things into them and telling them and showing them what to write. And it scared the crap out of me, because as I'm in this just grand place of self-discovery and just, I love information, but you have to be, what's the source? Right? You gotta do your research. What's the source? And so it scared the crap out of me, because I remember when I first started reading it, whatever my number was, I don't remember. But I was sharing it with baby. I said, wow, this is crazy. Because I felt like it was reading me up, down, left, right. Right. But to know that was counterfeit wisdom.
Yeah. And here's the thing that makes it counterfeit wisdom is when you take it as law. That's what makes it counterfeit wisdom.
No, the fact that it came from something that does not, the fact that it came from a witch, from witchcraft, from a world, a supernatural realm that did not come from God. And I say all that to say, like, it convicted me, because God is like, why are you going to every other book to find more about yourself than my book? Why aren't you studying my book? And so I threw that Enneagram book away, right? Renounced everything that I thought that I identified in it with. And so now I've been on a rampant, because I said, I don't want to experience that level of deception again.
Yeah. But also I want to say, because when using the term witch and all of that, like you know what you mean, and you know the details of what you mean, but everybody has a different definition for that.
True.
Right. So
True.
So let's use the term counterfeit wisdom, right? So when you look at a horoscope, right, it could be accurate because it's based upon human behavior, right? But it doesn't mean that it is specific to you. It doesn't mean that, like, for example, someone can say, I can look at a horoscope, it says, you're usually very patient, but something has been really ruffling your feathers lately. And you've been trying to be patient with it, but you're losing your patience, and your temperament is growing. And it's like, yo, this is so right. Truthfully, if I switch, like that applies to a large, a large, everyone, depending on what season that you're in. So that's the thing about the false wisdom, is that, yes, take it as education about, okay, maybe learning human behavior a little bit better, but don't take it as a law about, okay, this is me, you know, and this is how I do things, and this is what it is. Because you might be learning about a you that's not even the healthy you. You might be learning about a you that's not even the you that God created the you to be. This is, you might be learning about, oh, I'm getting more educated on how to function as a trauma-filled individual, you know? So you might be getting this information, but you're just learning how to function to be a functional traumatic individual, you know? So, or functional traumatized individual, you know, instead of like what baby said was, why are you going to everywhere else except for to my word to learn about who you are? You know? Yeah,
that convicted the crap out of me. And so now that is literally why I'm just on a rampant. I'm like, okay, like, let me study the character of the people used in the Bible and the people that succeeded with God, the people whom he was pleased with, who he said, job well done.
For sure.
Or who he trusted with more. How do I emulate that? How do I become that? So in order to do that, you have to fall in love with that.
Facts. And you know what? And let me just say this too, is that falling in love with God is falling in love with love. Because falling in love with God, you're learning about what love is. You don't know love until you know God.
Right.
And a lot of times we're just giving counterfeit love. We're literally giving make-believe love. Like, what is love? Whatever I feel or whatever I think. Right? That's not love. It can't be love, because if that's the case, then everyone's definition is different. Right? And the thing about truth is truth across the board.
Across the board. It's
right?
Objective,
exactly. Yeah. Truth is objective, not subjective.
Right.
So you can't know the definition of truth if your definition is subjective.
Right.
Now, one thing I do want to say too is that what baby is experiencing in her going deeper with God is God is literally teaching you discernment, greater discernment, right? Greater discernment. And God's going to do that in whichever way that he knows that speaks to you by way of the way that he created you, right? So baby can experience the discernment and then the reality of, oh, this is like cultish, or oh, this is like witchcraft, like this is like manipulation, this is, and for me, and that's the way that she receives that discernment, to be able to tell truth from manipulation. A lie. But for me, baby, we talk about it all the time, but I be on some, that's cap. That's trash. Well, they're pretending, because boom, 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 boom. Well, if that was true, boom, boom, boom. Like, it's a lot of logic, that God speaks to me through, but it's the same discernment, right? It's the same truth. It's just downloaded and cultivated in a different way. So I say that for anyone out there that is seeking discernment, is understand that God may lead you to discernment in your own way, right? But it's still only to the same place. It's only leading one place, and that's the truth. So seek out wisdom and discernment on your own. Don't get caught up in terminologies, because just using this as an example, baby can say witch, and I can say manipulator, and I can say capper. That's cap. You know what I mean? Like, and somebody else might say sorcery. Somebody else might say, God knows what. But long story short, if you can get the discernment and the wisdom from God by falling in love with God, that's the only way you can get it. You'll be able to understand when, no matter what terminology somebody uses, what they mean when speaking about truth.
Yeah.
For sure.
So good. And then lastly.
Well, not even lastly, let's just say really quick with the falling in love with God, is that's your first marriage. That's your first marriage.
That is the indicator of whether you are actually ready for marriage, right? If you can't lay down your desires for him, if you can't say no to yourself to say yes to him, if you can't align your desires with him, because that is a what's the word? It's a working relationship. Like that, like God, stop. Like God, yes, he is the leader, but he's so much more than that. Like, he's also your friend. He's also your partner. He's also your provider, So, and that's very much a mirror of what your earthly marriage should look like.
Yeah.
And so if you can't do that with God, chances are you are not ready for marriage, because God is going to require you to sacrifice a lot. He's going to require you to apologize a lot. He's going to require you to change a lot. He's going to require you to be challenged a lot, uncomfortable a lot, and so will your earthly marriage.
Yeah. And you see how she just said that that's how you prepare for marriage, is by your marriage with God. Here's scripture. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain, wrinkle, or any blemish, but holy and blameless. Okay, let me just go back to the beginning. Husbands, love your wife just as Christ loved the church. So, fellas, what does that mean? You can't love her unless you know how God loves you. You can't love her right? We're talking about in truth, the real love.
Yeah.
You can't love her unless you know how God loves you.
Yeah.
That's first.
Yeah.
Right? Ladies, he can't love you unless he knows how God loves him. He can't lead you unless he's being led by God. A lot of times we want to be the one to bring our spouse to God. Well, or maybe you need to bring your friend to God. If you care about this individual, bring this individual to God and not let it be about you first and then about their relationship with God. Because then it's kind of weird for you to be more passionate about your relationship with this person than their relationship with God. If you know God and they don't, and you're trying to be in a romantic relationship with them, an intimate relationship with them before they're intimate with God. So that's still selfish, right? But as she said, you can't know how to be married unless you to another person, unless you know what it's like to be married to God.
Yeah.
And it says, husbands, love your wife just as Christ loved the church, right? But here's the wives part. It says, wives, understand and support your husbands in ways that show your support for Christ. The husband provides leadership to his wife the way that Christ does to the church, not by domineering, but by cherishing. So just as the church submits to Christ as he exercises such leadership, wives should likewise submit to their husbands. Okay, fellas, if she doesn't have a relationship with God, right? If she doesn't operate with God in an understanding and supportive way, she most likely won't be able to do it with you effectively. Right? If she doesn't have a relationship with God, if she doesn't follow God's leadership, she's going to have a hard time following your leadership. Ladies, if you don't have a relationship with God, you're going to have a hard time following another man's leadership. Ladies, if you don't have a relationship with God, you're going to have a hard time being a great wife that is understanding and supporting in the ways in which he needs it.
Yeah.
Your first marriage is God. So you have to start working on that, falling in love with God for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Now, lastly, what's super important that we never really talk about, which her and we didn't think about and talk about, is consider how having a spouse would change your plans in your entire life.
And if you're ready to alter them.
And you have to ask yourself if you're ready to alter them.
Yeah.
Our biggest challenge that we've learned is...
Well, actually, I did that subconsciously.
What?
When I consider, not necessarily, I guess, well, because my first marriage was God, right? So he was my spouse because he changed my plan.
Yes.
So, but
that was before us.
Right. But I was already in that place. And so I was, to him specifically, I was like, okay, God, sure. But that whole spouse piece, right?
Yeah.
Because it talked back, y'all.
Yeah. He's a spouse talk back.
It talked
and God does too, but she bite. But you really do have to think about it, because a lot of our challenges was me seeing life through my lens, her seeing life through her lens, and us not really wanting to change our plans, but more so, okay, let's just figure out how to work around each other's plans. And that didn't work. You know,
which is why we're here.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's why we're here now. So, I mean, we keep that part short. Like, you just got to know that having a spouse will change your plans. And oftentimes you think that, oh, we're just going to join together and we're just going to do what I'm thinking about doing already anyway, but we're going to do it together. We're going to support each other. It's going to be dope. But it's not that, you know, and a lot of married people are struggling silently, but on social media posting happily, you know, so, you know, we won't dive into all of that, but you guys, this is part 2 of I Hate Being Single.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You know, so we gave you guys real life steps to go and be successful in your single season. It's not supposed to take away your desire for a relationship, but what you're supposed to do is submit that desire to God and trust that he's going to fulfill it, and don't do it on your own.
Absolutely. So again, community,
Bow.
right? Trauma triggers.
Bow.
Hobbies. Bucket list. Therapy. Get out there. See the world. Travel. Educate yourself.
Education.
Fall in love with God.
Fall in love with the Father.
And then consider, if you get married, how it's going to change your plan, and if you're ready.
Because it will change your plan.
It's going to change everything, y'all.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. I love you, beautiful.
I love you, handsome.
We love y'all. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share, leave a comment. We want to talk to y'all.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Okay. All right. Bye. Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you just for your patience. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for your provision. Thank you for just your love, dear Lord. We pray this episode that you just speak through us, dear God. Don't allow for any of the minor inconveniences to just get our energy off, get our thoughts off, get our alignment off, or get our actual assignment off, dear God. We ask that you just breathe over today's podcast episode. We love you so much. We just thank you for this message. We thank you for just your love and just all that you would use us for your glory. Thank you for my husband. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.